Wow, and we're back from a hiatus. Good to be back. James Gordiner here. Socratic Logic by Peter Kreeft. I have a second edition here in physical form. And this is a logic text using the Socratic method, Platonic questions, and Aristotelian principles. Let's just get right into it. The preface. This book is a dinosaur. Once upon a time in Middle Earth, two things were different. One, most students learned, quote unquote, the old logic. And two, they could think, read, write, organize, and argue much better than they can today. If you believe these two things are not connected, you probably believe storks bring babies. It is time to turn back the clock. Contrary to the cliche, you can turn back the clock, and you should, whenever it is keeping bad time. I learned that and thousands of other very logical paradoxes from G.K. Chesterton, the 20th century Socrates. As I write this, it is the last Sunday of October, and we have just turned back our clocks from daylight saving time to standard time. This is a parable for what I am convinced we must do in logic. The prevailing symbolic/mathematical logic is a logic that a computer can do. It is artificial, like daylight saving time. It is very useful where there is already much intelligence, like in the minds of geniuses, especially in science, just as daylight saving time is very useful in the summer when there is a plenitude of sunlight. But as the sunlight of clear thinking, writing, reading, and debating decreases in our society, it is time to make progress by turning back the clock from quote-unquote daylight saving time to real time, real language, real people, and the real world. The old Socratic, Platonic, Aristotelian logic is simply more effective than the new symbolic logic in helping ordinary people in dealing with those four precious things. This text differs from nearly all other logic texts in print in the three ways suggested by the subtitle. It does this by apprenticing itself to the first three great philosophers in history, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Do we have better ones today? Number one, no other logic text explicitly sets out to train little Socrateses. Number two, no other logic text in print is so explicitly philosophical in a classical, Platonic way. And number three, and only two or three other shorter, formal logic texts bypass mathematical and symbolic logic for the quote-unquote Aristotelian logic of real people, real inquiry, and real conversations. The only other alternative to symbolic logic available today is quote-unquote informal logic or rhetoric. This is useful but less exact and less philosophical. Introduction. Section 1. What is good logic? This section will give you 13 good reasons why you should study logic. Footnote 1. Making numbered lists like this is the first and simplest way we learn to order, quote, the buzzing, blooming confusion, end quote, that is our world. Children, quote unquote, primitive peoples, and David Letterman love to make lists. Thus, we find 12-step programs, the 10 Commandments, the 7 Wonders of the World, the 5 Pillars of Islam, the Four Noble Truths, and the 3 things more miserable than a wet chicken. To make a list is to classify many things under one general category, and at the same time to distinguish these things by assigning them different numbers. Number 1, order. You may be wondering, what can I do with logic? The answer is that logic can do something with you. Logic builds the mental habit of thinking in an orderly way. A course in logic will do this for you even if you forget every detail in it, which you won't, by the way. Just as learning Latin will make you more habitually aware of the structure of language, even if you forget every particular Latin word and rule. No course is more practical than logic, for no matter what you are thinking about, you are thinking, and logic orders and clarifies your thinking. No matter what your thoughts content, it will be clearer when it has a more logical form. The principles of thinking logically can be applied to all thinking and to every field. Logic studies the forms of or structures of thought. Thought has form and structure too, just as the material universe does. Thought is not like a blank screen that receives its form only from the world that appears on it, as a movie screen receives a movie. This book will show you the basic forms or structures and the basic laws or rules of thought, just as a course in physics or chemistry shows you the basic forms and laws of matter. Number 2, power. Logic has power, the power of proof and thus persuasion. Any power can be either rightfully used or abused. This power of logic is rightly used to win the truth and defeat error. It is wrongly used to win the argument and defeat your opponent. Argument is to truth as fishing is to fish, or war to peace, or courtship to marriage. The power of logic comes from the fact that it is the science and art of argument. In the words of an old logic text, logic hath its name from logos ratio, because it is an art which teacheth to reason and discourse. Thus beginneth Thomas Good's 1677, a brief English tract of logic. Dialecte, otherwise called logique, is an art which teacheth to dispute well. This is the first sentence of a 1574 book, Logique, by Peter Ramus Martyr. Logic is so powerful that it can be dangerous to life. Socrates, the father of philosophy and the model for this book, was literally martyred for being logical by the city of Athens, the ancient world's most famous and quote-unquote civilized democracy. The Apology, Socrates' swan song, is his defense of philosophizing, of his life of logical inquiry. It is one of the greatest speeches ever made. No one should be allowed to die without reading it. Footnote number 2. See Philosophy 101 by Socrates, An Introduction to Philosophy via Plato's Apology by Peter Kreeft, published in 2002. Whether you use logic for right or wrong ends, it is a powerful tool. No matter what your thoughts and or goal or purpose may be, it will attain that end more effectively if it is clearer and more logical. Even if you want to do something with logic rather than let logic do something with you, even if you want to deceive others or snow them or toy with them, you need to know logic in order to be a successful sophist. You must be a real logician, even to be a fake one. Number 3, reading. Logic will help you with all your other courses, for logic will help you to read any book more clearly and effectively. And you are always going to be reading books. Books are the single most effective technological invention in the history of education. On the basis of over 40 years of full-time college teaching of almost 20,000 students at 20 different schools, I am convinced that one of the reasons for the steep decline in students' reading ability is the decline in the teaching of traditional logic. Mortimer Adler's classic How to Read a Book is based on the traditional common sense logic of the 3 acts of the mind that you will learn in this book. If I were a college president, I would require every incoming freshman to read Adler's book and pass a test on it before taking other courses. The most important points of that book are summarized in this book on page 355. Number 4, writing. Logic will also help you write more clearly and effectively. For clear writing and clear thinking are a package deal. The presence or absence of either one brings the presence or absence of the other. Muddled writing fosters muddled thinking, and muddled thinking fosters muddled writing. Clear writing fosters clear thinking, and clear thinking fosters clear writing. Common sense expects this, and scientific studies confirm it. Writing skills have declined dramatically in the 40 years or so since symbolic logic has replaced Aristotelian logic, and I am convinced this is no coincidence. There is nothing more effective than traditional logic in training you to be a clear, effective, and careful writer. It is simply impossible to communicate clearly and effectively without thinking clearly and effectively. And that means logic. Number 5, happiness. In a small but significant way, logic can even help you attain happiness. We all seek happiness all the time because no matter what else we seek it because we think it will be a means to happiness or a part of happiness, either for ourselves or for those we love. And no one seeks happiness for any other end. No one says he wants to be happy in order to be rich or wise or healthy, but we seek riches or wisdom or health in order to be happy. How can logic help us attain happiness? Here is a very logical answer to that question. 1, we attain what we desire. When we attain what we desire, we are happy. 2, and whatever we desire, whether heaven or a hamburger, it is more likely that we will attain it if we think more clearly. Number 3, and logic helps us think more clearly. Number 4, therefore logic helps us make us happy. Logic helps us to be happy. Maybe I need reading skills. No other things make us happy. No other things that make us happy are contradicted or threatened by logic, though many people think they are. Beauty, for instance. There is nothing illogical about the beauty of a sunset or a storm or a baby. Take heroism or even holiness. What's illogical about being very, very good? Even fantasy is not illogical. In fact, according to the greatest master of this art, J.R.R. Tolkien, fantasy is a rational, not an irrational activity. Creative fantasy is founded upon the hard recognition that things are so in the world as it appears under the sun, on a recognition of fact, but not a slavery to it. So upon logic was founded the nonsense that displays itself in the tales and rhymes of Lewis Carroll. If men really could not distinguish between frogs and men, fairy stories about frog kings would not have arisen. The reference to Lewis Carroll, the author of Alice in Wonderland, is particularly telling. Lewis Carroll was a pseudonym or a pen name for Reverend Charles Ludwig Dodgson, an Oxford mathematician who wrote a textbook in logic. In fact, he was working on volume 2 when he died. Number 6, religious faith. All religions require faith. Is logic the ally or enemy of faith? Even religion, though it goes beyond logic, cannot go against it. If it did, it would literally be unbelievable. Some wit defined faith as believing what you know isn't true. But we simply cannot believe an idea to be true that we know has been proved to be false by a valid logical proof. It is true that faith goes beyond what can be proved by logical reasoning alone. That is why believing in any religion is a free personal choice. And some make the choice while others do not, while logical reasoning is equally compelling for all. However, logic can aid faith in at least 3 ways. And thus, if faith significantly increases human happiness, as most psychologists believe, it logically follows that logic can significantly increase happiness. First, logic can often clarify what is believed and define it. Second, logic can deduce the necessary consequences of the belief and apply it to difficult situations. For instance, it can show that if it is true, as the Bible says, that God works all things together for good for those who love him, Romans 8:28, then it must also be true that even seemingly terrible things like pain, death, and martyrdom will work together for good. And this can put these terrible things in a new light and give us motive for enduring them with hope. Third, even if logical arguments cannot prove all that faith believes, they can give firmer reasons for faith than feeling, desire, mood, fashion, family or social pressure, conformity, or inertia. For instance, if you believe the idea mentioned above that all things work together for good for those who love God, simply because you feel good today, you will probably stop believing it tomorrow when you feel miserable. Or if you believe it only because your friends or family do, you will probably stop believing it when you are away from your friends and family. But if you have logical grounds for believing this, even though those grounds are not a compelling proof, they can keep your faith more firmly anchored during storms of changing feelings, fashions, friends, etc. How could there be logical grounds for such a belief as this, that all things work together for good? That seems to contradict common sense and experience. Some logical grounds might be the following. This conclusion can be logically deduced from 4 premises, which are much easier to believe. 1, that God exists. 2, that God is the creator of the universe and thus all-powerful. 3, that God is the source of all goodness and thus all good. And 4, that God is the source of all design and order in the universe and thus all wise. A God who is all-powerful is in control of everything he created. A God who is all good wills only good to everything he created. And a God who is all wise knows that it is ultimately for the best for everyone and everything he created. So to deny that all things are foreseen and allowed by God for the ultimate good of those he loves, i.e., wills goodness to, is to deny either God's existence, power, goodness, or wisdom. In a logical argument, you cannot deny the conclusion without denying a premise. And you cannot admit the premise without admitting the conclusion. The logical chains of argument can thus bind our minds, and through them also even our feelings, to a certain degree. to God and to hope and to happiness. And if these four basic premises of God's existence, power, goodness, and wisdom, are questioned, logic may also help to establish them by further reasonable arguments, e.g., the traditional arguments for the existence of God. And perhaps logic can give good grounds for the premises of those arguments too. The point is not that logic can prove religious beliefs. That would dispense with the need for faith, but that it can strengthen them, and thus also the happiness that goes with them. And if it does not, if clear, honest, logical thinking leads you to disbelieve something you used to believe, like Santa Claus, then that is progress too. For truth should trump even happiness. If we are honest and sane, we want not just any happiness, but true happiness. Number 7, wisdom. Philosophy. The word philosophy means the love of wisdom. Although logic alone cannot make you wise, it can help. For logic is one of philosophy's main instruments. Logic is to philosophy what telescopes are to astronomy and microscopes to biology or math to physics. You can't be very good at physics if you're very bad at math, and you can't be very good at philosophy if you are very bad at logic. Okay, number 8. Democracy. There are even crucial social and political reasons for studying logic. As a best-selling modern logic text says, the success of democracy depends, in the end, on the reliability of the judgments we citizens make, and hence upon our capacity and determination to weigh arguments and evidence rationally. As Thomas Jefferson said, in a republican nation, whose citizens are to be led by reason and persuasion and not by force, the art of reasoning becomes of first importance. Okay. Number 9, defining logic's limits. Does logic have limits? Yes. But we need logic to recognize and define logic's limits. Logic has severe limits. We need much more than logic even in our thinking. For instance, we need intuition too, but logic helps us recognize this distinction. In our lives, logical arguments are always embedded in a human context that is interpersonal, emotional, intuitive, and assumed rather than proved. And this colors the proper interpretation of a logical argument. For instance, in 1637, Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." 370 years later, a bumper sticker says, "I bitch, therefore I am." The logical form of both arguments is the same, but the contexts are radically different. Descartes was seriously trying to refute skepticism, the belief that we cannot be certain of anything, by a purely theoretical argument, while the bumper sticker was making a joke. We laugh at it because we intuitively understand what it means. That it means, don't complain at my bitching. Bitching makes me feel more real, more alive. Logical thinking alone cannot know this, but it can know what its limits are. It can distinguish what it can understand from what it can't. Non-logical factors such as humor and feeling and intuition. Number 10, testing authority. We need authority as well as logic, but we need logic to test our authorities. We need authorities because no individual can discover everything autonomously. We all do, in fact, rely on the human community and therefore on the authority of others. Parents, teachers, textbooks, experts, friends, history, and tradition for a surprisingly large portion of what we know. Perhaps up to 99% if it can be quantified. And that is another reason we need logic. we need to have good reasons for believing in our authorities. For in the end, it is you, the individual, who must decide which authorities to trust. It is obviously foolish to buy from every peddler of ideas that knock on your mind's door. In fact, it is impossible because they often contradict each other. I just want to take a brief second to kind of just X out number 10. Like, logic actually helps you understand that in the long run, the only authority that you should be recognizing is yourself over yourself. And then actually, no, that's second to God and natural law. Okay. And then after that, it's yourself, your own free will, your ability to make the choices that you can make to avoid initiating harm on people. Outside authorities, as far as like governmental structures and everything, you know the channel you're on. Okay. I don't solicit that. I do not advise you, the listener, to go and put blind faith in authorities. It's actually later on in the book, Logical Fallacies, one of the most popular ones is an appeal to authority, that just because somebody has a degree or they have a badge that you're going to do what they say, or they're wearing a little, shiny American flag pendant and they got a D or an R next to their name. You got to do what they say. That's dangerous. So number 10, yeah, we do need to test authority because it does exist, right? It's a construct. It's an egregore in some sense. The authority figures. We do need to test their authority. We need to extinguish it as well. All right. So let's move on with this list. Number 11 is recognizing contradictions. One of the things you will learn in this course is exactly what contradiction means, how to recognize it, and what to do with it. Logic teaches us which ideas contradict each other, sort of like number 10. If we are confused about that, we will be either too exclusive, that is, we will think beliefs logically exclude each other when they do not, or too inclusive, that is, we will believe two things that cannot both be true. When we consider two different ideas which seem to contradict each other, we need to know three things, which are, 1, first of all, we need to know exactly what each one means. Only then can we know whether they really contradict each other or not. If they do, we need to know which one is true and which one is false. And number 2 is the true and false thing. Number 3, if we do this by finding reasons why one idea is true and another one is false. These are the 3 acts of the mind: understanding a meaning, judging what is true, and reasoning. These are the 3 parts of logic which you will learn in this course. Number 12, certainty. Logic has what you can call outer limits. There are many things it can't give you, but logic has no inner limits. Like math, it never breaks down. Just as 2 + 2 is unfailingly 4, so is A, and so if A is B and B is C, then A is unfailingly C. Logic is timeless and unchangeable. It is certain. It is not certain that the sun will rise tomorrow. It is only very, very probable. But it is certain that it either will or won't. And it is certain that if it's true that it will, then it's false that it won't. In our fast-moving world, much of what we learn goes quickly out of date. He who weds the spirit of the times quickly becomes a widower, says G.K. Chesterton, but logic never becomes obsolete. The principles of logic are timelessly true. Our discovery of these principles, of course, changes and progresses through history. Aristotle knew more logic than Homer, and we know more than Aristotle, as Einstein knew more physics than Newton, and Newton knew more than Aristotle. Our formulations of these changeless logical principles also change. This book is clearer and easier to read than Aristotle's Organon 2,350 years ago. But it teaches the same essential principles. Our applications of the timeless principles of logic to changing things are also changing. The principles of logic apply to many different and changing things, but the principles themselves are unchanging and rigid. They wouldn't work unless they were rigid. When we hear a word like rigid or inflexible, we usually experience an automatic, quote-unquote, knee-jerk negative reaction. But a moment's reflection should show us that, though people should not usually be rigid and inflexible, principles have to be. They wouldn't work unless they were rigid. Unless the yardstick is rigid, you cannot use it to measure the non-rigid, changing things in the world, like the height of a growing child. Trying to measure our rapidly and confusingly changing world by a flexible and changing logic instead of an inflexible one is like trying to measure a squirming alligator with a squirming snake. Number 13. Truth. Our last reason for studying logic is the simplest and most important of all. It is that logic helps us find truth, and truth is its own end. It is worth knowing for its own sake. Logic helps us find truth, though it is not sufficient of itself to find truth. It helps us especially, 1, by demanding that we define our terms so that we understand what we mean, and 2, by demanding that we give good reasons, arguments, and proofs. These are the two main roads to truth, as you will see more clearly when you read chapter 2 on the 3 acts of the mind: understanding, judging, and reasoning. Truth is found only in the second act of the mind, which is judging, e.g., the judgment that all men are mortal, but 2 paths to truth are the first act of the mind, e.g., understanding the meaning of the terms men and mortal, and the third act of the mind, e.g., reasoning that since all men have animal bodies, and whatever has an animal body is mortal, therefore all men are mortal. These are the 2 main ways logic helps us to find truth. Truth is worth knowing just for the sake of knowing it, because truth fulfills and perfects our minds, which are parts of our very essence, our deep, distinctively human core, our very selves. Truth is to our minds what food is to our bodies. Aristotle pointed out 24 centuries ago that there are 3 reasons for pursuing truth and 3 corresponding kinds of sciences. In the older, broader sense of the word sciences, namely rational explanations through causes, he called the 3 kinds of sciences: 1, productive sciences; 2, practical sciences; and 3, theoretical sciences. Each pursues truth for a different end. Number 1, we want to know about the world so that we can change it, improve it, and make things out of it, like rubber, or roads, or rockets, or robots. This is what Aristotle called productive science, since its end is to produce things. We call it technology, after the Greek word techne, which means approximately know-how. For you audio-only people out there, that's quote-unquote know-how, like the know-how. Knowing how to make or fix or improve some material things in the world. Productive sciences include things as diverse as engineering, surgery, auto repair, cooking, and cosmetics. We also want to know about ourselves so that we can change and improve our own lives, our behavior, our activities. Aristotle called this the practical science, knowledge in practice, in action. Practical sciences include ethics and politics, as well as knowing how to do things as diverse as economics, singing, and surfing. But most of all, we want to know simply in order to know, i.e., to become larger on the inside, as it were, to expand our consciousness. Sciences that pursue this end Aristotle called theoretical sciences, from the Greek word theoria, which means looking or contemplating. Theoretical does not necessarily mean uncertain or merely hypothetical. Theoretical sciences include such diverse things as physics, biology, theology, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy. These all have practical applications and uses, but they are first of all aimed at simply knowing and understanding the truth, even if there is no practical application of it. Many people today think that theoretical sciences are the least important because they are not practical. But Aristotle argued that the theoretical sciences are the most important for the same reason that practical sciences were more important than productive sciences, because their payoff is more intimate, their reward closer to home. For they improve our very selves, while practical sciences improve our actions and lives, and productive sciences improve our world. All three are important. But just as our lives are more intimate to us than our external world, so our very selves are even more intimate to us than our lives, our deeds, and certainly more intimate and more important to us than the material things in the world. As a very famous and very practical philosopher argued 20 centuries ago, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his own self? Mark 8:36. The original meaning of a liberal arts education was this: the study of the truth for its own sake, not only for the sake of what you can do with it or what you can make with it. The term liberal arts comes from Aristotle. He said that just as a man is called free when he exists for his own sake, and a slave when he exists for the sake of another man, so these studies are called free, liberal, or liberating, because they exist for their own sake and not for the sake of anything else. Logic will prove very useful to you in many ways, but its most important use is simply to help you see more clearly what is true and what is false. Logic alone will not tell you what is true. It will only aid you in discovering truth. You also need experience to get your own premises. Logic can then draw your conclusions. Logic will tell you that if all leprechauns are elves and all hobbits are leprechauns, then it necessarily follows that all hobbits are elves. But logic will not tell you whether all leprechauns are elves, or even whether there are any leprechauns. I once asked my very Irish neighbor whether she believes in leprechauns, and she answered, "Of course not. But they exist all the same, mind you." Perhaps the Irish should write their own logic textbook. To have logical clarity and consistency is admirable, but to have only logical clarity and consistency is pitiful. In fact, it is a mark of insanity, as G.K. Chesterton pointed out. If you argue with a madman, it is extremely probable that you will get the worst of it, for in many ways his mind moves all the quicker for not being delayed by the things that go with good judgment. He is not hampered by a sense of humor or charity, or by the dumb certainties of experience. Indeed, the common phrase for insanity is in this respect a misleading one. The madman is not the man who has lost his reason. The madman is the man who has lost everything except his reason. If a man says that he is the rightful king of England, it is no complete answer to say that the existing authorities call him mad. For if he were king of England, that might be the wisest thing for the existing authorities to do. Or if a man says that he is Jesus Christ, it is no answer to tell him that the world denies his divinity, for the world denied Christ's. His mind moves in a perfect but narrow circle. A small circle is quite infinite as a large circle, but, though it is quite as infinite, it is not so large. In the same way, the insane explanation is quite as complete as the sane one, but it is not so large. So you are the creator and redeemer of the world. But what a small world it must be. What a little heaven you must inhabit, with angels no bigger than butterflies. How sad it must be to be God, in an inadequate God. Is there really no life fuller and no love more marvelous than yours? How much happier you would be. How much more of you there would be if the hammer of a higher God could smash your little cosmos, scattering the stars like spangles, and leave you in the open, free like other men to look up as well as down. Curing a madman is not arguing with a philosopher. It is casting out a devil. All right. So that's where we're going to cut it off for this round. In a couple of weeks, I'll be back with section 2, and we're just going to take this, one episode at a time. I appreciate anyone tuning in, and this is, I'm pretty excited to be back. I've been learning how to be a dad of 3 kids for the past few months. I really hit it hard when the newborn was just an infant. But after a couple of months in, it became clear that there was a lot of heavy lifting to do. I had to put this to the side for a while, and we've been having a lot of fun. But now I think I'm at a point where I can carve out a little bit of time every week to get a video up where we can learn some stuff together and learn our way to freedom. That's the goal here, just to learn our way to freedom. This text is extremely important because it's the way that we, hold on, there it is. This is the way. I like Peter Kreeft's Socratic Logic here. Clearly there's some things here that are of the that are in the vein of statism and authority, belief in authority, but it's not blind belief in authority. It doesn't seem to me to be blind belief in authority. You can't logically have blind belief in authority. So we're going to learn together on this. I'm happy to bring this information to you guys. I don't think a reading of this book exists anywhere, so I think you're in for a treat here at Voluntaryist Academy. If you like what you heard, thank you very much for being here. If you thought it was boring, well, you got to this point, so why don't you stick around for the next one too, or go into the backlog and see some of the interviews or some of the other literature that I've brought to the channel. Maybe you have a change of heart. Either which way, I just thank you very much for tuning in. There is no website, so I don't have a website right now, but if you'd like to help me get my website back, check out the show notes. There's a few things that we can do. If you go to the Buy Me a Coffee link, there's now a membership available where you can join the Discord channel. You can do the Discord server and we can chat. And I'm thinking that every couple of weeks, every 2 weeks, we do a town hall event where the audience or the members can come and meet each other and hang out with me and, hang out with special guests. I have some pretty cool friends that I can invite and you get to meet too. So it's like that. Yeah, definitely check that out. See if it's for you. I certainly would appreciate it. I want to get that website back up. I feel kind of weird, like I forgot my winter coat and there's a blizzard coming without a website, but we're doing this anyways. Yeah, go check out the onegreatworknetwork.com and check out AUTONOMY. See if that's right for you. It's a 12-week course hosted by Richard Grove of Tragedy and Hope, or Grand Theft World. And it can really help you a lot, really help you break free in your mind and realize all the possibilities out there, unlock skills that are latent within you, and really open up your mind to all the possibilities that you could, all the endeavors that you could pursue in the world, and hopefully, I don't know, gain a little bit more freedom, because that's what it's all about. So check that out, and check out Brenda. I'll play it on the outro. I'll play the outro. The background music on the outro is Brendan Daniel. He's a friend of mine. Check out, I think there's a link in the show notes. Check out his Instagram. He's a very talented musician. I usually play him in the intro, but tonight we're going to do it on the outro. So this coming week is Pork Fest. If you guys are going to be there, come by the AUTONOMY tent. I'm going to be there hanging out with Richard and the rest of the AUTONOMY people over there. It's going to be fun. I'll be there next weekend. So that's why there's no show next weekend, but maybe the following week I'll be able to continue with this, with Peter Kreeft's Socratic Logic. And until then, I'll see you guys later. Welcome to Voluntaryist Academy. This channel is dedicated to teaching natural law and to the abolition of slavery in the 21st century. Join me, James Cordiner, your guide through many important and some forgotten historical articles, along with interviews featuring today's most important voluntarist leaders that outline what we can and need to do today to further usher in a condition of real freedom for us and for the future. Voluntarism leads to real freedom. All other political philosophies allow a ruling class to engage in violence and coercion against the majority. Voluntarists reject the artificially indoctrinated belief system of statism in favor of true freedom through the voluntary interactions between free people. Voluntarist Academy will teach all things regarding the only ism that is fair for everyone. Subscribe today and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And on your way out, just remember, you own yourself, period.